Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello. Welcome back to Bite Size Balance. Today we have a special episode for you. I'm joined by my fellow certified This Naked Mind coach, Lynn Paulson, who's been on the podcast a couple of times before to help answer some of the questions that we have stored in our question bank from the group coaching program that we have now been running since the fall of 2021. So we have been collecting these questions. We answered them in the weekly coaching calls that are part of the Rewind group coaching program. But what we thought we'd start doing is taking a few of the questions that feel like more general questions that probably many of my listeners also have, and doing a live answering of those on this podcast in an anonymous format. So we chose 3 questions for today that I think are going to be really applicable to a lot of different women who are working on changing their relationship with alcohol. We chose one question that's specifically from someone who wants to be alcohol-free but isn't there yet. So somebody in the very beginning stages of this, starting to question their relationship with alcohol, wondering if it's still serving them. One from somebody who is in the very early stages of being alcohol-free, and another one from somebody who's been alcohol-free for a long time. And our hope is that, you know, there will be some really helpful coaching nuggets and some little tips and strategies that we share in today's podcast that will help you. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. If you are curious about the Rewind program, we will have another program launching in May. We will be starting things off like we did in January with our 5-day challenge, Rewind Challenge, which is a really great live event that we did in January. We're going to do it again because it was just incredibly well attended. We absolutely loved it. We had between 70 and 90 people on each call daily, and it was just so much fun. So we're going to be doing that again. And then we will be running the Rewind 6-week Rewind coach-led program again this spring. So if you're interested in that program, it is coming again. If you go to the show notes for this podcast, I will have the information that you need to get some more details on that. So I will put that in the show notes. So here we go. Here is my Ask the Rewind Coaches episode with my friend, Lynn Paulson. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Emily. Welcome back.
Hi, Wendy. Good to see you.
We are answering today some of the types of questions that we've been getting regularly in the Rewind coach-led group program that we run, because we just thought that they would be helpful to other people to hear as well. And we get questions every week. Obviously, we do group coaching sessions. And so we've got this bank of questions that we've been asked. And we just thought this would make a great podcast episode and maybe something that we might do more regularly. So we have picked 3 questions today to answer. They are all related to women's relationships with alcohol. And we tried to pick a question from different stages in the changing of your relationship with alcohol, if that makes sense. The first one is from someone who's still drinking, but wants to explore their relationship with alcohol and create some freedom from it. The second one is from someone who's in the very early stages of doing an experiment in not drinking. And the third one is from somebody who is much further along the path. So I'll read the first one and then I'll let you take a stab at it, Emily, and I'll pipe in. We have similar backgrounds in terms of our coaching certifications, but we have different stories when it comes to alcohol. So we always have a little different take on things, which I think is helpful. So the first question is, I want to be alcohol free. I'm so excited, hopeful, curious, and at the same time, very overwhelmed by the unknown and the work ahead of me. What are some good tools to help me take it one moment at a time and not overwhelm myself?
Yeah, this is such a common one. And I think this is something that keeps people from starting in the first place. They think, gosh, I know I want to put this behind me, but next month's going to be tricky. And I don't know if I can do it. And what about a birthday in 3 months? Like, you start thinking about your life and how your life is now and how it's going to be in the future. So I think the best thing to do here is remind yourself of what other things have I learned in my life that have been really exciting, that I was really curious about, and that were really hard and overwhelming, but now I do with very little problem.
Right.
And if you know, Wendy and I at all, we make a lot of analogies. And for some reason, I have a lot of analogies about cars. So my favorite one with this is learning to drive a car. Almost everyone has learned to drive a car. And it's one of the most overwhelming, large amounts of information in a small amount of time, learning a new skill. And you think about, you get in the car, you've never driven before, you've maybe seen your mom drive before, but you've been in cars, but maybe you haven't paid so much attention. And all of a sudden you realize, I don't know where my foot goes. Why is there 2 pedals for one foot and not one for the other? And what does the blinker do? Where's the windshield wipers? Like, I haven't even left the curb yet. I haven't even started the car. There's so much to learn. And then what happens? Eventually, you're 17, you're 18, you drive to the store and you barely remember getting in the car and getting there because it becomes so automatic. So I would continue to remind yourself as you are embarking on this process, no matter how you start or when you start, remind yourself, like, I know this is going to be challenging, but think of all the challenging things I've done before and I've conquered. And I think it is the fact that you're saying excited, hopeful, curious. Those are the keys. Curiosity, just thinking like, what if this goes really well? Because that's a possibility. Yeah, it could be hard and difficult. And those are all the things you're thinking, but could actually also be really great and really awesome. And you could learn some amazing things you don't even know.
Yeah. I echo all of that. That's great. And I too am a fan of analogies and have several car analogies. So between the two of us, we talk a lot about cars, but that's a really, really good analogy. Everything is hard when we start learning it. And the more we do things, the easier it gets. And eventually we get to that really sweet spot where it becomes habitual and almost automatic. And that's when it's easy. And that is usually when we have achieved some freedom from it as well. So I love that answer. I would say another thing that I thought of that might be helpful is to really focus in on what you want today and not worry about what you want tomorrow. And you can do this by doing something that I call bookending, which is where you start your day with something that kind of anchors you in your intention for that day. And then you end your day with something that celebrates the achievement of that goal or intention for the day. So for example, you wake up in the morning, you have a cup of coffee by yourself, take a minute to yourself and you have a think about what you want for yourself that day. What do you want? Well, I want to be alcohol free today. I want a day where I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time thinking about alcohol. I want to feel great when I go to bed tonight. I want to be present for my kids. You work your way through all of that. You can even journal about that, but you set a very specific intention for the day. And if there's anything that's coming up during the day that you know might be particularly challenging or triggering for you around that, you make a plan for that as to how you're going to handle it, what you're going to do, what tools you're going to use. And then at the end of the day, before you go to bed, you get into the practice of reflecting on the day and on the intention that you set for yourself and giving yourself a pat on the back. And then you get up the next day and you set a new intention for the next day. And that intention gets to be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the same intention as today, which is to not drink. So all that really matters is what you want for yourself today. And that is the thing that I think can be a really helpful grounding tool when we start doing that future tripping that you were talking about, Emily, where we're like thinking already down the line, like, how am I possibly not going to drink at my, when my now 10-year-old gets married in 20 years,
Yeah.
how will I do that without alcohol? It doesn't matter. Just think about today, and the bookending thing can be really, really helpful. And for some people in the Rewind program, for example, or other people that we coach, they'll actually take that time in the morning to watch a little coaching video or to connect with the community. And that can be really helpful too, in terms of grounding them and setting that intention for the day.
Yeah. And that's why we have journal prompts. And, we really set you up for this from the beginning, so you don't have to spend so much of your own brain power worrying about all the things that we will kind of talk you through.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So the next question we have is from someone who is now on day 9. So they are now 9 days alcohol free. And they said, so week 1, I didn't have any cravings. Now I'm on day 9 and the cravings are happening. They're short, but strong and happen frequently in the evenings. Running, journaling, and a sweet treat are the main things I've been doing in the place of drinking. What are some other ways to distract and not cave into a quick but seriously strong craving? I'm new to not caving and my tool bag is small.
Yeah. So this is really common too. And the timeline can be different for everybody, but you kind of have this period of time where you're like, yes, you're cheering yourself on. You've got a lot of willpower. We talk a lot about willpower, right? And then the novelty may wear off a little bit. And that's when you really have to dig into, what am I really wanting right now? So having tools is great. Running, journaling, having a sweet treat, whatever you need to do, like all of those things are great, but getting to the bottom of, why am I actually doing this? What am I feeling? And what can I do in place of that? So if the thought is, gosh, I really want a glass of wine, what are you really wanting? What are you really thinking? Is it, I'm thirsty? There's a million ways to help with that. Have a glass of water. Are you stressed out? Again, maybe you need to take a walk around the block. So even though you're doing these things, these tools, running, journaling, a sweet treat, are you actually fulfilling the need behind that craving? I think that's really important to identify from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we've talked about a lot together in various things that we've done coaching wise is the really common need that happens for so many women at wine o'clock, or the witching hour, as we like to call it. So right around 5 o'clock, when you get home from work, it's a really common time for people to struggle with pretty serious cravings. And I think the underlying need there is a really common one. And what we've been able to identify as that need for many of the women that we've worked with is the need to take a break and have some kind of actual transition between the workday and the home responsibilities. So a lot of women are going, plowing home after work in their car and then going right into the house where they're, have a kids wrapped around them like octopi. I think that's how you say that.
Yeah.
Just pulled that. You like how I just pulled that right out.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And then they have, maybe they're having to like figure out what's for dinner and get going with all of that. And that is leading to a feeling of having nothing for themselves, no time for themselves, no break, no transition, no opportunity to just kind of breathe, kind of work your way through, process whatever the emotions are that are coming home from work with you, and actually creating that, separation and division between work and home. That's so essential. So I loved what you said about, is what you're doing actually identifying the need? Identifying and filling that need. So for example, is a sweet treat doing that? If what you need is a transition, does that treat actually do that? Probably not. Probably what you need in that, like the running might, if you're leaving the house and going for a run, that might, but the sweet treat probably wouldn't in those circumstances. How do you actually address that underlying need if what you need is a break? Will you give yourself a break somehow? And this often requires some planning in advance. You have to talk to, if there's another person in the house who's helping with childcare responsibilities, you have to talk to them. Maybe if your kids are a little older, you have to explain to your kids that you need this time. For a lot of the moms that we've worked with, we suggest actually sitting in the parking lot at the office for 15 minutes before you leave, or in the driveway of your house if you can get away with it when you get home, and giving yourself a chance to listen to, a calming soundtrack or piece of music, or just breathing, or, doing a short little meditation or something like that. But it is all about, what is it that I need in this moment? And it is never alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is something too that comes with time. And you say, my tool bag is small. It's going to be small at first. It's going to take a while to figure out what works for you, because what works for you may not work for another person. What worked for me may not work for you. And figuring out what your tools really are. So give yourself some grace in the process. And it can be hard not to judge ourselves as moms, but to say, okay, this will get easier. I know this will get easier. And what else, what else can I do right now? And just kind of give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah. Ask yourself what brings you joy and start making a list of that. And it's really helpful to have the list on hand, because in the moment when you're feeling really overwhelmed and exhausted and all the rest of it, you can't think of what the things are that actually make you feel good. So having a little cheat sheet note on your phone, or, a list in a journal that you can go and look at, that just to remind you of the small things that bring you joy. And then you can try those. I mean, this is all part of the experiment, right? Like, what actually works for me in the moment. And, I had a client, a couple of weeks ago, I had suggested that taking a hot bath was something that helps me, and that it actually provides me with that same feeling that I used to get from a glass of wine, of physical relaxation. Like, I can actually feel my muscles relax. And that's something that I used to think I got from a glass of wine. And so a hot bath is really helpful. And I threw that out there. It's just something that I've tried. And then I think I said, sometimes even running my hands under hot water does the trick. And she came back a couple of weeks later and said, oh my God, that hot water thing it's amazing. Like, if you turn the tap on and let it get really, really hot and just hold your hands under there and close your eyes, it kind of can be, you can pretend you're at a spa. Like, it can work. Right. So, experimenting with things and being open and curious is really the key here.
Yeah. And these are things too that help. They help everything. This is not just, when we're looking at going alcohol free and this is your goal, these are also things that will help with stress that is leading you to drink. You're really looking for things to make your life better. So alcohol is small and insignificant, and you're not using it to fill all of these needs. So these things will only help and enhance other areas of your life too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. The only other thing that I thought might be helpful, if this person does not, or if anybody listening doesn't have this tool yet, is the play the tape forward tool, which is really, I think, one of our favorite tools for in the actual moment. So when you're having a craving, one of the, I think, few tools in the moment that will almost always take you out of the moment, which is the goal, right? It's really, it's a way to ask your future self what they want for you now, is by playing the tape forward. So what is myself tomorrow? What would myself tomorrow tell me about what to do in this moment? And so play the tape forward is really simple. You just get really honest with yourself, and you walk through all of the steps of what will happen if you choose to drink first. So what do I really want? Well, I think I really want one glass of wine, which, for most of us, is not actually what we want. And so we end up having the glass of wine. If we're being honest, we're probably going to have another one. And then if we're being honest, we might have a really hard time not having another one. And what does that lead to? How does that make us feel? What's the difference between how we feel after the first glass, the second glass, the third glass? How does that impact the rest of our night and the plans that we had for ourselves? How do we feel when we go to bed? How do we sleep that night? How do we feel when we wake up in the morning? What are we saying to ourselves in the morning when we wake up after having had the wine the night before? And how does that impact us during the rest of the day after? How do we feel physically? And how does that impact our mood and all of that? And then I always recommend you also play the tape forward where you don't choose the drink, right? So what does the night look like if I don't have the drink? And you work your way through all of that. Well, you know what? I'm probably going to have to sit here with this craving for a while, and it might be uncomfortable, but I can go to my list of things that I like to do and try some of those things and see if that helps. And at some point this craving will pass, because we know scientifically that cravings only last for about 20 minutes. So, it's going to pass at some point. And then I'm going to get on with the rest of my night, and I'm going to be there and be more present for my kids. And I'm going to be able to drive so-and-so to basketball later tonight because I won't have had some drinks. And I'm going to sleep a lot better tonight because I am alcohol free. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning feeling amazing about the fact that I didn't drink last night. And that's going to set me up for a really fantastic day where I probably do all of the things that make me feel good, including getting out for a walk at lunchtime, or going to the gym, or, doing my journaling, or whatever it is. So playing the tape forward involves not just playing it forward as though you had the drink, if you have the drink, but also the other one. And I think that is probably the most helpful tool that I had in my toolkit in the early days. And I really recommend that you give it a shot. If you're not already doing it, you can do it in your head, but you can also write it out.
Yeah. Very good point. And I think because we, in the beginning, we talked about future tripping a little bit. The difference, saying, what's the difference between future tripping and playing it forward? I thought I wasn't supposed to think in the future. The difference is playing it forward is using information you already know. You know what happens when you have one glass of wine, or you wouldn't be questioning whether you need it. Playing the tape forward is based on information you know. Future tripping is based on information you have no idea, based on a thought process you don't know you will have. Like, again, thinking about your future 10-year-old daughter's wedding and whether you're going to have a drink. So future tripping is based on what you don't know. Playing the tape forward is based on facts.
Right. And around the future tripping, the other thing I always like to remind people of is the fact that you can't possibly account for the change that's going to happen between now and then in terms of how you view the problem, right? So the perspective that you have around not drinking right now is going to be very different from the perspective that you have around not drinking in 6 months, in a year, even in 2 weeks. So when we are trying to guess how the thing is going to go in the future, we are necessarily doing that through the lens of how we feel about the problem today. And that means that the answer that we're getting is never going to be correct, because we just can't, we're just incapable of doing that. So I always use that example of me, being a couple of months alcohol free and booking a trip to Italy with my family. And we were literally staying in a vineyard, and me thinking for the next 8 months or whatever it was, me freaking out about how hard it was going to be, to go to this vineyard. And what I could not possibly account for was the fact that 8 more months of being alcohol free completely changed the way I thought about being alcohol free. And to the point that I was really excited about by the time the trip came around, I was really excited to actually go and do that. And not worried at all about not drinking, because my life without alcohol was just so freaking fantastic that I was, not thinking at all at that point in time about drinking, something that I couldn't even imagine when I booked the trip.
Yes. And you can also make, a choice in the future, 2 years from now, 3 months from now, 2 weeks from now. You can still make a choice on that day. And that doesn't have to impact the choices you make today, the next day, until that point. So at your daughter's wedding in 20 years, you still have you're an autonomous adult who has the ability to make a choice that day, and what you do from now until then doesn't need to impact that choice. So that's why taking it a day at a time and setting intentions in the day is so important.
Yeah. No need to ever say forever. In fact, that usually backfires in our experience. Okay. The last question we have is this. I have been alcohol free for just over 3 years. Amazing. Yeah. I started in December with a decision that I wasn't going to drink until my 45th birthday in February. And then I spent the whole year of being 45 alcohol free. And then I just kept going, and I will be 48 next month, and I have no desire to drink. What I'm looking for is help to better understand how I can be so proud of myself and also embarrassed of my not drinking. I joined Rewind to help me identify some beliefs I must have that are counterproductive. What I have done for myself and my family is amazing, and I want to figure out how to minimize the insecurities of being the odd mom out, or the only alcohol-free person I know besides my husband. Oh my God, such a good question. And totally brings me back to days when I still felt like the odd man out, even though I was just intensely proud of myself for not drinking.
Yes. So I think this is really important, because this is a common thing that comes up in the beginning. It's like, what do I say to people? How do I deal with people who are drinking and I'm not, and I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. So making choices based on how other people, as opposed to how you feel. So you've already identified, I realized it was amazing. I haven't drank for 3 years now. It's awesome. So you know how great it is for you. There's no question about that. So these beliefs that somehow the way other people view your drinking, so you're taking those on, you're taking on other people's feelings. Now, I would ask, what is really the belief there? Is it the belief that maybe you don't think people think you're fun? Kind of dig into that a little bit. And one thing I like to challenge people with when they have this roadblock and they've had some time and they're very secure in their, alcohol, they feel very free from alcohol, other than the social piece of it and what other people think is, I'll say, okay, what if you go to an event tomorrow and literally everyone is smoking cigarettes. And you say, no, I don't smoke. How will you feel? Almost always the answer is, well, fine. I don't smoke. Why would I smoke? I'm not a smoker. And then apply that to your alcohol-free journey and like, well, no, why would I drink? It makes me feel terrible, or all of these reasons that you have. And that can help you take that judgment off yourself and realize this is a societal issue. This isn't a you problem. This really is an assumption from other people that everyone drinks, but you don't have to take that on. And it can take some practice too.
Yeah. And what's the best way to shift that societal assumption or that societal kind of belief? I think it's to show up alcohol-free and be really fun. And so I think that's your superpower here. And the way to kind of, to feel a whole lot better in this situation is to focus in on how you want to show up for this and what's important to you in how you conduct yourself. And I've always felt really strongly about the fact that the most impactful thing that I can do for anyone, whether it's my kids, my teenagers or my family members or my friends, is to just show up and role model an alcohol-free life that's really, really fulfilling and fun. Because, when I think back to the days when I wasn't drinking, when I was still drinking, I could not imagine that life would be fun without it. And so I wish I had had someone who I could look to and say, oh, look at that person out there killing it, having a blast, doing all the things alcohol-free, because that would have been really actually helpful to me and quite exciting probably to see that. So that's one of the things I wanted to add to that. And the other thing I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about is the fact that the tide is turning on this. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to feel this way in the moment, and we all feel this way, and there's no need to judge yourself for feeling this way. It's, of course, whenever you're feeling like the minority, it can feel a little awkward, and you can feel like another in that situation. But it is, I think, really important to also celebrate the fact that the tide is starting to turn on this. I mean, for those people listening to this podcast, you have heard some of the really cool people I've had on here talking about the alcohol-free drink industry and what's happening there. I mean, that's really cool. And Emily, can you speak a little bit to like the new, I don't want to call it like the new face of alcohol recovery or freedom for women and moms?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's unfortunate on one hand that it's getting so much media exposure now because of all the negative consequences, right? Mm-hmm. You look back at cigarettes, and obviously we used to think they were healthy, and then we saw people were getting cancer and all these things. It's kind of a similar trajectory to alcohol, where in the last few years, especially the last 10 years, and really it's been exacerbated by COVID, we see a huge increase in drinking impacts in women. And so because of this, more media outlets are talking about it, more people are speaking out on it, more celebrities are talking about it. So it's just been more in mainstream media, which again, counteracts all those messages of, the commercials where everyone's drinking and having fun and all of those things we've been inundated with our entire lives. And they're doing more research studies about it. The whole red wine is good for you has completely been debunked now. The American Heart Association, American Cancer Society have changed their stance on alcohol. So there's a lot, the tide is turning scientifically, it's changing in mainstream media. And so I think this idea that, not wanting to say you're alcohol free, there's still a belief that like, it's not good, or it's still not the normal, you feel odd. And I would reframe that, because even in this question, she says, it's an amazing thing I've done for myself and my family, right? Mm-hmm. It is an amazing thing. Amazing things you do for yourself, you want to shout from the mountaintops, right? Not that you have to go out and tell everybody if you're not comfortable with it. But if you became an Olympic gold medalist and you came home to your group of friends, you're probably the only one with a gold medal, right? Would you be embarrassed of it because you're the only one? Or would you shout it out and be proud of yourself? Well, of course you'd be proud, because you view that as an achievement. So reframing this not drinking as an achievement, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I love that. I have not heard your gold medal analogy yet. So that's one that I will put in my analogy toolbox as a coach. That's a good one. The other thing that I also like to remind people of, because oftentimes this type of concern is rooted in this feeling of like, these people are still able to do this activity. They're still able to drink. They're able to like let loose and have fun and party and be rebels. And like, I can't, I'm like this no fun person. I've lost, women often say things to me like, don't take this away from me. This is my one vice. This is the one thing I do that's not like, that's not great. Yeah. And I get it, but don't take it away from me. And what I like to remind people of is that the overwhelming majority of American adults drink. The overwhelming majority, we know that it's like 80+% or whatever of Americans drink. And like a whole heck of a lot of them wish they drank less. We also know that. I think it's like 50% at least would wish that they drank less. So at least 50% of all the drinkers out there are questioning their relationship with alcohol. And that's probably underreporting, because who admits to that, right? Yeah. So we know all of that. So I ask you, how is it an act of rebellion to drink? And for a long time, that was me feeling like I was somehow a rebel out there drinking in my night off, partying, doing the whatever. But the truth is, the act of rebellion is in going against the grain. It's in choosing the thing that is actually righter for you, that makes you feel good. And in this case, it's in the not drinking. So rebel up. If this is what you want for yourself, go and get it. And I think it's important to celebrate that and recognize the fact that every positive movement and change started with a smaller group of people. And, just because you're still in the minority doesn't mean you're in the wrong. I think it's really important to remember that. So
reframing from the I can't to I don't need to.
Yeah.
Huge.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think that's it.
That's it. That was easy.
That was easy and quick. So we're going to come back and do short podcasts like this, where we choose some good questions. We're also happy to take questions from you. So if you're listening to this podcast episode and you have questions around how to change your relationship with alcohol, how to drink less, how to be happy not drinking if you're already not drinking, but you're not feeling free yet from it, please send those our way. You can just email me or you can message me through any social media channel. Let me know that you have a question for the Ask the Rewind Coaches podcast episode, and we will put it on our list for the next time we do this. Right. Thank you, Emily.
Okay. Thanks, Wendy.
Always lovely to chat with you.
You too.
See you guys soon. Are you drinking more than you'd like, but finding it hard to cut back? I've got some great news. My popular 5-day rewind challenge is starting again very soon. This 5-day challenge is the circuit breaker you've been looking for to start making alcohol small and irrelevant in your life. Join us and learn a little more about why you drink and what life might be like if you drank a little less. Whether this is the first time you've gotten curious about alcohol or something you've been struggling with for years, this no-strings, completely free challenge is for you. Join us every day for 5 days to learn the game-changing mindset shifts to drinking less without feeling deprived. Recorded replays are available to registered participants only. Get the details and register now at wendymccallum.com/challenge. That's WENDYMCCALLUM.com/challenge.